This episode is presented to you in the form of an audible book. Imagine yourself lying on your deathbed, looking back at your life. What would you see? A journey filled with purpose and joy, or a collection of what-ifs and missed opportunities? Many people face their final moments haunted by regrets, wishing they had lived differently, loved more deeply, or had the courage to follow their own path. But what if you didn't have to wait until the end to realize what truly matters? Bronnie Ware, a former palliative care nurse, spent years sitting beside the dying, listening to their most intimate confessions. In her book titled The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying, she reveals the most common regrets people have in their final days, insights that can serve as a powerful guide for those of us still fortunate enough to change our course. Bronnie Ware argues that avoiding regret is mostly about courage. For instance, society's expectations, limiting beliefs that we hold, and fear of change often push us toward choices that don't truly fulfill us. We chase careers we don't love, suppress our emotions, and postpone our dreams for someday, until we realize too late that someday never came. But it doesn't have to be that way. By learning from those who have already walked this path, you can break free from the patterns that lead to regret. Bronnie Ware never planned to work in palliative care. She started her career in banking, following somewhat a conventional path. But something always felt missing. Seeking deeper meaning, she left her corporate job and found herself caring for terminally ill patients. Over 8 years, she became more than just a caregiver. She became a witness to the raw, unfiltered wisdom of the dying. These experiences changed her life forever, and she felt a deep calling to share their lessons with the world. In this episode, we are going to look at the 5 biggest regrets people have at the end of their lives. I've broken these regrets into 2 categories: personal regrets and regrets about relationships. I'll explain why these regrets are so common, how they creep into our lives, and most importantly, how to avoid them. Then, I'll share some of Bronnie Ware's advice on building the courage to make choices you won't look back on with sorrow, so you can start living a life you'll be proud of today. Part number 1. Regrets about yourself. The first type of regret Ware's patients shared was about themselves. The choices they didn't make, the dreams they let slip away, and the happiness they put on hold. These weren't regrets about what happened to them, but about what they didn't do. The moments they wished they had been braver, more authentic, or simply allowed themselves to enjoy life. Regret number 1. The regret of not living authentically. At the end of their lives, many of Ware's patients shared the same painful realization. They had spent too much time living for others instead of themselves. They had followed expectations, played it safe, and silenced their own desires, only to realize too late that they had never truly lived the life they wanted. Living authentically means making choices based on your dreams, values, and beliefs, rather than bending to social norms or other people's approval. But too often, fear holds us back, the fear of judgment, disapproval, or disappointing those around us. And so we compromise, we suppress, we wait. In the book, Ware shares the story of Grace, a woman who had spent decades in an unhappy marriage, longing for freedom and adventure. She had always dreamed of traveling the world, but she felt pressured to stay, trapped by duty and the fear of what others might think. When her husband was finally placed in a nursing home, she had a fleeting taste of the independence she had longed for. But before she could embrace it, life took a cruel turn. She was diagnosed with a terminal illness. Lying on her deathbed, she was overcome with regret, not because of what she had done, but because of what she hadn't. So, how do you avoid this regret? How do you break free from the weight of expectations and start living a life that feels real to you? The answer, Ware says, lies in courage. The courage to stop prioritizing what others want and start honoring your own needs and dreams. She actually experienced this struggle herself, staying in a banking career for years despite knowing it wasn't right for her, simply because she feared her family's disapproval. But working with the dying opened her eyes. In the end, the opinions of others didn't matter. What mattered was whether someone had lived in a way that felt true to them. Her patients saw this too. Far too late. The expectations they had spent a lifetime chasing, the approval they had feared losing, none of it meant anything in their final moments. What did mean something was whether they had been true to themselves. Regret number 2. The regret of neglecting happiness. Happiness is something many people spend their entire lives chasing, but often they never stop long enough to actually experience it. Ware discovered that a common regret among the dying was not allowing themselves to be happy sooner. Many had spent years postponing joy, telling themselves that they'd finally be happy someday. For example, when they got a better job, bought a house, or moved somewhere new. Happiness, they realized too late, wasn't something waiting for them at the finish line. It was something they could have chosen all along. Others resisted happiness because they felt they didn't deserve it. They had convinced themselves that joy had to be earned, that it was a reward for hard work or good behavior. But the truth is that happiness isn't a luxury. It's not something only a few get to have. It's always been available. They just hadn't given themselves permission to embrace it. One of Ware's patients, Lenny, understood this truth. He had experienced deep loss, losing his wife and 3 of his children. Yet, despite his pain, he didn't let sorrow define his life. He found contentment because he had allowed himself to love deeply and receive love in return. His happiness didn't come from avoiding hardship, but from choosing to focus on the joy that still existed around him. Ware emphasizes that happiness is often a choice, not in the sense of forcing yourself to be cheerful when life is hard, but in recognizing that you have control over where you place your focus. Do you dwell on what's missing, or do you notice the small moments of joy that are already within reach? Happiness doesn't have to be a grand achievement. It can be found in the rhythm of your favorite song, the warmth of a hug, or laughing at a funny video. When you stop waiting for happiness to arrive and start creating it in small ways every single day, you'll realize that joy has been available to you all along. Part number 2. Regrets about the people in your life. As the end of life draws near, one truth becomes painfully clear for many. Relationships matter more than anything else. Yet, too often, people realize this only when time is running out. Bronnie Ware's patients frequently expressed deep regret over the way they treated the people in their lives. For example, they weren't haunted by material possessions they did not own, but by the moments they didn't spend with loved ones, the calls they didn't make, the words they never said, the connections they let fade. Many wished they had been more present, more open, and more intentional in nurturing their relationships. In this part, we will explore the regrets people have about relationships and the powerful lessons they leave behind. Regret number 3. The regret of putting work before relationships. At the end of their lives, few people wish they had spent more time at the office. Yet, for many of Bronnie Ware's patients, this realization came too late. They had spent decades chasing success, promotions, and material comforts, only to find that in doing so, they had sacrificed what mattered most: time with the people they loved. One of Ware's patients, John, embodied this regret. He had built a successful career, taking great pride in his work. His wife, eager to explore the world with him, encouraged him to retire so they could finally enjoy their time together. But John kept delaying, caught up in the sense of importance his job gave him. Then, just months before his planned retirement, tragedy struck. His wife passed away. Nearing the end of his own life, John confided in Bronnie Ware that no achievement or title could ever make up for the years he had lost with her. He wished he had chosen differently. To avoid this regret, Ware suggests simplifying your life by focusing on what truly fulfills you and letting go of unnecessary distractions. It's easy to get trapped in the cycle of working for more: a bigger house, a nicer car, the latest gadgets, believing that success and happiness are just around the corner. But in the end, no amount of material wealth can replace the moments spent with loved ones. Instead of measuring success by possessions, measure it by the quality of your experiences and relationships. When you shift your perspective and prioritize what's most important, you can cultivate a work-life balance that brings fulfillment instead of regret. But beyond finding balance, Bronnie Ware encourages people to pursue work that aligns with their deeper purpose. Some of her patients didn't just regret working too much, they regretted spending years doing work that didn't fulfill them. When your work reflects who you are and what you care about, it stops feeling like an obligation and becomes an expression of your values. It contributes meaningfully to the world and in turn brings greater rewards. Not just financial, but personal and emotional as well. Unfortunately, her patients learned this lesson too late, realizing only at the end that the right work, combined with a well-balanced life, could have brought them both fulfillment and time for the people they loved. Regret number 4. The regret of not sharing honest feelings. Many people go through life carefully guarding their emotions, choosing silence over vulnerability. But for Bronnie Ware's patients, one of the deepest regrets they faced was not being brave enough to express how they truly felt about the people they loved, the things they wanted, and the pain they carried. One of her patients, Joseph, spent most of his life prioritizing work while keeping his family at arm's length. He feared opening up, believing that expressing his emotions would make him weak or vulnerable. He thought staying reserved was the safer choice. But as the years passed, he began to realize the cost of his silence. He had missed out on the warmth, closeness, and deep love that only come from being emotionally open. Near the end of his life, he told Ware that his greatest sorrow wasn't something he had done, but rather what he had held back. He wished his family had truly known who he was. Holding back your feelings may feel easier in the moment. It avoids conflict, spares you discomfort, and shields you from rejection. But Ware's patients learned that unspoken words create invisible walls. They prevent others from truly knowing you, understanding you, and loving you for who you are. Bronnie Ware herself experienced the power of open communication when she spoke honestly with her grandmother about aging and the fear of losing her. Instead of avoiding the difficult conversation, they leaned into it, saying the things that needed to be said, expressing love without hesitation, and appreciating their time together more deeply. Their honesty didn't create distance, it brought them closer. So, how do you avoid the regret of not sharing your true feelings? Bronnie Ware suggests taking inspiration from children. They don't hold back their emotions. If they're happy, sad, or upset, they express it freely without overthinking how others might react. Of course, honesty comes with risks. Not everyone will welcome it. Some people may react poorly or even choose to walk away. But Ware argues that this isn't a loss, it's clarity. The relationships that remain will be built on authenticity, mutual understanding, and genuine respect. Think about it. At the end of your life, what will you regret more, the discomfort of being honest, or the pain of never being fully known? Regret number 5. The regret of losing touch with friends. Life has a way of pulling us in different directions. Careers demand our time, families grow, responsibilities pile up, and before we know it, the friendships that once brought us joy begin to fade into the background. Many of Ware's patients expressed deep regret over not trying harder to maintain their friendships, realizing too late that those connections had been some of the most meaningful parts of their lives. One of Ware's patients, Doris, felt this regret profoundly. Living alone in a nursing home, she had no family nearby. Her daughter had moved to another country. Consumed by her own busy life, Doris longed for the comfort of old friends, the kind of companionship that made life feel warm and familiar. She told Ware she wished she had put in the effort to keep those friendships alive. Moved by her words, Bronnie Ware did some research and managed to track down one of Doris's old friends. She arranged a phone call between them, and in that moment, Doris's loneliness was replaced with joy. That conversation brought her peace in her final days, a reminder of the love she had once shared. In the book, Ware encourages people to recognize the value of true friendships, the friends who accept you as you are, stand by you through life's ups and downs, and bring out the best in you. She explains that being surrounded by the wrong people, those who don't truly understand or support you, can feel even lonelier than being alone. Unlike family, who may have expectations about who you should be, real friends embrace you for who you already are. But like any meaningful relationship, friendships require effort, reaching out, checking in, and making time for the people who matter is what keeps those bonds alive. And Ware's patients wished they had understood this earlier. Friendships don't maintain themselves, they require effort, even in the busiest seasons of life. But the reward is immeasurable. A life rich with laughter, love, and companionship. Part number 3. How to live without regret. Now that we've explored the most common regrets people face at the end of their lives, the real question is, how do you avoid them? Living without regret isn't about luck, it's about conscious choices, self-awareness, and courage. Bronnie Ware didn't just learn this from her patients, she lived it herself. She walked away from the security of a steady banking career to pursue a path that was uncertain but meaningful. She followed her love for songwriting, embraced a simpler life, and found deep purpose in caring for terminally ill patients. Along the way, she realized that a regret-free life isn't about playing it safe, it's about daring to live fully. Even when it feels uncomfortable, regret is often born from inaction, the words left unsaid, the risks not taken, the time wasted waiting for the right moment. But the truth is, the right moment is now. Every day, you have the chance to make choices that align with your values. Nurture your relationships, and create a life that in the end, you'll look back on with pride, not sorrow. So, as we move forward, let's now explore how to cultivate the courage to make bold, intentional choices, the kind that lead to a life well lived. Tip number 1. Embrace death as a natural part of life. In our society, death is often a taboo subject, something we avoid thinking about. We push it to the back of our minds and treat it as a distant, abstract concept rather than an inevitable part of the human experience. But this avoidance comes at a cost. When we refuse to acknowledge death, we risk living as if time is unlimited, postponing our dreams, ignoring our true desires, and failing to appreciate the moments that matter. Bronnie Ware argues that to live without regret, we must first come to terms with our own mortality. Instead of fearing death, we should see it as a reminder to live fully, intentionally, and without hesitation. But why do we struggle to accept death? One reason death feels so foreign to us today is that it has become hidden from everyday life. In the past, multi-generational households were common. Grandparents, parents, and children all lived under the same roof, allowing younger generations to witness the realities of aging and dying up close. This natural exposure made death feel like a normal transition rather than a mysterious, frightening event. But today, the elderly often live apart from their families, placed in nursing homes or care facilities. This makes the process of dying more distant and unfamiliar. Without this exposure, many people grow up without ever truly confronting the concept of mortality until they are forced to face it in their own lives. Though it may seem uncomfortable, acknowledging your mortality is one of the most powerful things you can do. When you accept that your time is limited, your perspective shifts. For example, you stop worrying about what others think and start living for yourself. You prioritize experiences and relationships over material possessions. You become more intentional with your decisions, making choices that truly align with your values. Tip number 2. Surround yourself with the right environment. One of the most overlooked but powerful influences on your life is your environment, where you live, work, and spend your time. Ware argues that to live without regret, you must be intentional about the spaces you occupy, making sure they align with your goals, values, and the person you want to become. In the book, she shares a striking story about one of her younger patients whose life changed drastically after an accident. He was placed in an assisted living facility, and at first, he remained hopeful, motivated, and eager to continue learning and growing. But over time, a quiet transformation took place. The drive and ambition that once fueled him slowly dimmed. Surrounded by a stagnant routine, scarce social connections, and an environment that no longer nurtured growth, his perspective began to change. Without even realizing it, he became a reflection of the world around him. This story is a reminder that our environments influence us more than we think. They shape our thoughts, habits, and even our sense of possibility. The wrong environment can slowly drain your motivation, while the right one can challenge, inspire, and push you toward the life you truly want. Here, Bronnie Ware's advice is simple. Choose your environments wisely. If you're surrounded by negativity, complacency, or people who don't support your aspirations, it becomes harder to make choices that lead to fulfillment. On the other hand, when you place yourself in spaces that inspire you, whether it's a workplace that challenges you, a home that brings you peace, or a community that encourages growth, you set yourself up for a life you won't regret. Tip number 3. Let go of what you can't control. So much of our anxiety, frustration, and regret comes from trying to control the uncontrollable, how others perceive us, the outcomes of our efforts, and the unpredictability of life itself. But Ware argues that true courage and happiness come from accepting what's out of your hands and focusing on what you can control. When you stop clinging to control, you free yourself to make bold choices without fear. You can express your true feelings, knowing that how others react is beyond your power. Stoic philosophers understood this well. They warned that tying your happiness to things outside your control is a recipe for disappointment. However, they didn't advocate for passivity. They encouraged a different mindset. Some things, like your effort and attitude, are fully in your control. Others, like how people respond to you, are entirely out of your hands. Most things, like career success or relationships, fall somewhere in between. You can influence them, but never fully control them. Bronnie Ware offers 2 powerful practices to help you release control and embrace life as it comes. First is to practice meditation to gain awareness. That's because meditation helps you step back and observe your thoughts rather than being consumed by them. When you become more aware of your inner dialogue, you can recognize negative, unhelpful thoughts and replace them with better ones. The second practice is to cultivate self-compassion. Accepting that you're not in control also means being kinder to yourself. Self-compassion allows you to make difficult decisions with less fear. When you know that no matter what happens, you'll treat yourself with understanding rather than self-criticism, you become more willing to take risks and embrace change. Instead of beating yourself up over failures, self-compassion reminds you, I did my best with what I knew at the time. This shift in perspective gives you the confidence to make decisions you won't regret, even if they don't turn out perfectly. Letting go of what you can't control is about surrendering the illusion of control and choosing to act anyway. You can't dictate how life unfolds, but you can control how you respond. And when you release the weight of the uncontrollable, you'll find the clarity, courage, and peace to live a life that truly feels your own. The key takeaway from this episode in Bronnie Ware's book is that none of her patients ever wished they had bought more things or accumulated more wealth. In the end, what truly mattered to them was how they lived, how they loved, and the impact they had on others. As we wrap up, I just want to say thank you for being here. I hope this episode gave you something valuable to reflect on. If you'd like to support the channel, you can subscribe on YouTube. Thank you again for being here. Take care, and I'll see you next time.